What's your thought, or what are you seeing now in regards to non-competes? What are you seeing now in regards to that? Because I know a lot has changed, state by state, of course.
I mean, the trend, especially in Colorado and many other states, is that they're not enforceable. And in Colorado, if you try to enforce an unenforceable non-compete, there are penalties associated with it now. There are.
I'm so tired of micromanaging. How do I train, manage, and lead? I can't find time to be visionary. Head down in the weeds.
All right, gang, welcome back to another episode of Hire and Empower Podcast. I'm excited. Today, we're talking about the heavy, hard shit that attorneys don't like to talk about, which fascinates me, which is called business contracts and being legally prepared. I'm excited about today's guest. We're being joined by business law attorney Bill Burke, partner and co-founder of Independence Legal Group. They focus on estate planning, probate, and business services here in Colorado. And we'll dive into all the nitty gritty. For me, I'm excited because just a little sidebar note, when people say networking doesn't work anymore, yes, Bill and I met at Provisors Group, which if you're not involved in Provisors, highly recommend. Bill worked with me to find his amazing client service coordinator. We're talking shop about business or passion. I'm like, ooh, I need to get my house in order. So I'm excited. Bill's firm, Jared, is focusing on estate planning, probate. By and large, I'm going in next Monday for my estate plan review, which I'm excited about. And Bill's my business attorney, and he had full permission to even share stories about my client contracts, about my business documents, all that. So I'm excited. Thank you for being here today and being my guest.
So much, Molly. I am also very excited. This is my very first podcast.
Well, we're going to have fun.
I know. Wonderful.
Well, let's dive in and skip all the fluff stuff because business owners ain't got time for fluff. So many entrepreneurs, they need legal documents, but they don't fully understand why until it's too late, right?
No, yeah, you're right. My job as a business attorney, I tell clients, is keep you in business and keep you profitable are my main goals. The way that I do that as a business attorney is ensuring that you're minimizing risk where possible and ensuring that you have the appropriate legal documents in place so that, it's not just about protecting your rights. It's about each party understanding what their legal obligations are. And so clearly articulating those things is really important.
Yeah. From your experience, what's a real danger when business owners operate without proper contracts, partnership agreements, and their legal structure in place?
Yeah, I mean, it's just not understanding what the risk is or not having the appropriate agreements in place. The prime example, like just off the top of my head, are independent contractors. Right? The law requires that if they are an independent contractor, that you have a legal document in place. So for Colorado, for example, the Department of Labor prescribes a list of things that you have to have for them to even be considered an independent contractor. Otherwise, the law presumes that they are an employee. And so, most people don't know that or understand that. And so it's important to have an attorney really flesh out the type of relationship and to clearly articulate that relationship.
That's a big one. I'm even hearing from so many of my clients who, our attorneys are in massive lawsuits for the misdesignation within that, or they'll take in an old employee offer letter and just copy and paste it, but they're dictating the hours that they work. They're giving them PTO, not reading it. And I mean, I have several clients right now in massive lawsuits where, they just were incredibly sloppy and lazy. And, a lot of times myself included, until you educated me on independent contractors, and you're just at so much danger. And right now, more than ever, what I'm hearing is that the courts are favoring with these independent contractors for misclassification.
They have an incentive. The government has an incentive to find the employer-employee relationship because it does two things. One, as an employer, you're required to withhold taxes, right? So they want to ensure that they're getting their share. And then also, they want to ensure that employee benefits, so like unemployment is a big one. Workers' compensation is another big one. So it's twofold, taxes and employee benefits. They want to ensure that they maintain those things. And so they are going to do everything they can to find the employee-employer relationship. And oftentimes, look, I get it. These small companies, they want to, having W-2 employees is very expensive, and it's easier to do the independent contractor route in a lot of instances, but it just requires a conversation with them of, look, here's what the law, at least at a minimum level, requires you to have. Here are the risks involved. And here are the main, part of the part of the value that I bring is 7 years of experience dealing with these things, right? If this becomes an issue, then it's going to be either taxes or it's going to be some kind of respondeat superior. A contractor, quote unquote, did something negligent, and now you're getting sued for that. And the plaintiff's attorney is going to try. They're going to make the argument that you are an employer. Why? Because it's another defendant. It's another person to sue. It's potentially a deeper pocket for them. So understanding those risks and at a base level, what the law requires you to even have an argument that they're an independent contractor. I know we're kind of down this rabbit hole, but it is a really common one and one that's important. So that's just one example of, go ahead.
A business law and contracts. Let's talk about the second one that, you and I had a conversation about during one of our provisors where, I have brand new law firms. They leave the big firm. They start hanging their own shingle, start their own partnership. Talking about partnerships in twofold. One, where everyone's equal partners, right? And where you see that because everyone loves each other. They're all,
Right.
hunky-dory. Talk about what you see in partnership agreements.
Yeah, well, it's just, to your point, nobody ever thinks it's going to happen to them. And in fact, when I bought half of, so Jared started Independence Legal Group back in 2020. He was the real founder. And then I bought half of it in 2024. And I was adamant about drafting the appropriate operating agreement for us as business partners to ensure that if something, number one, that we understand, again, our rights and responsibilities in this partnership. And then also, what do we do if somebody dies? What do we do if somebody becomes incapacitated? How do we value our interests? And it's, in some instances, it's not, look, we take you where you're at, right? And so it may not be that we're ready to have some of those conversations, but at least articulating or setting up the framework in the very beginning to answer as many of those questions as you can. And if we can't answer those questions, then implementing some kind of mechanism to get to those questions when the event arises is critically important. Even if and especially with partners, like what is everybody bringing into this partnership? And are people bringing in assets, and how should those be titled, and how should they be valued? And these are really important questions to get done before before there's a divorce, so to speak, before things stop being good between your partners. Because then it's just finger pointing at that point.
Do you recommend that once you do the initial setup of the partnership and what have you, do you recommend that you do an annual well check appointment to make sure it's relevant? What's your thoughts and comments in regards to setting up any contract, right? And then reviewing it? Mm-hmm. How often?
Yeah, these are not static documents oftentimes. In no cases are they static documents. You have to update them with change in circumstances. And just, with contracts, especially as like if I draft a brand new contract for you, we'll put it in play and then we'll amend it based on what kind of feedback you get out there in the wild, right? Because what I don't want for you is to have to constantly negotiate contract provisions. That takes time, it takes money to do that. It can be very expensive. And so as you start to get pushback on particular provisions as your business attorney, it's important that I know these things so that I can go in and amend these agreements to make them more marketable. If we're just being unreasonable, perhaps, in what we're asking for, maybe there's a middle ground that we could start with and minimize some of those back and forth. But also with partnership agreements or with operating agreements with LLCs, updating those documents. Maybe the company is worth $20,000 when you start, and then 5 years down the road, it's worth $5 million, right? And maybe the company is going to be valued very differently at that point in time. And so you want to ensure that, especially if you have valuation metrics in those agreements, that you're going back and revisiting them and ensuring that everything actually works the way you intend it to work. And so what I would say is, at a minimum, maybe at an annual basis, you mark it on your calendar with your partner or partners to just revisit those provisions.
Yeah, because to your point, I have a firm that they hung their own shingle and 7 months later, they didn't expect it, but they're $3 million above, what have you. And now One of them is considering stepping out and become the manager, being the acting managing partner, which nobody thought that was a position that was needed when you're hanging your shingle, right? So things shift in regards to that. Talk to me about contract. Yeah, go ahead. No, you just have a little bit of delay. That's okay. Well, we'll catch it on the editing, so don't worry about it. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, having something in play, having an attorney draft you something when you're first starting out is just really important. It doesn't have to be, a $5,000 operating agreement. It doesn't have to be, a 50-page document. It can be as simple as, here are the owners, here are their respective. Is it one level of ownership or are there multiple levels? Does one have preferred rights and one doesn't? Are they all voting rights? Reflecting these basic things are really important. And so when I talk to clients, I talk to them about their budget. If they're like, Bill, we're just getting started, we could use a lot of this money to allocate in other places. That's totally fine. We'll give you something that is pared down to where at least we know who the owners are, how many levels of ownership there are, and just at a base level, what happens when somebody dies or.
Yeah. Let's talk about client contracts and kind of the scope creep that occurs and how vague contracts can lead to disputes, reputational damage, unpaid work, unpaid deliverables or over deliverables. What do you see? And I know you redid all my client agreements, and I'm so grateful for that. And we saw many of these issues, but what are the common issues that you see in client agreements?
That's a great question. So just to take your contracts, for example, what I did when I reviewed your agreements was to look through and streamline the contract. So I look through, and if things are redundant or if they could be pared down, that's where I start. I start by ensuring that the contract itself makes sense and that we don't have redundant or conflicting provisions within those agreements. And then once we pare all of that down in an initial review, I sit down with you, right? And I say, all right, where are your pain points? Where are you having conflicts out there in the wild so that we can drill down on those things and maybe state them better or differently? Because what I see, typically it's going to be just a misunderstanding as to what, again, it goes back to rights and responsibilities. What are you giving to me and what am I paying for? What are those things due? And what happens if we disagree about a payment or about an action item? Is there a resolution process? And so for me, it's typically a lot of issues around payment structures, in particular if we're going back to like employee-employer relationships. So like profit sharing is a big one between key employees. So if you're the employer from the onset, or if you're in a partnership or a joint venture with another party and we'll give you a portion of profits. Well, what does that actually mean? How do we define that? And really having a back and forth with that other party where there are multiple drafts and red lines and explanations for it. This is how, and use examples for how you think you intend it to work so that in that process, you're fleshing out any potential misunderstandings that you and the other party have.
Yeah, I love that. You brought up something when you went back to employees and contracts or even agreements. What's your thought or what are you seeing now in regards to non-competes? I hear this so often when people are writing offer letters or employment agreements. What are you seeing now in regards to that? Because I know a lot has changed state by state, of course, but also at the federal level.
Yeah, look, the trend, especially in Colorado and many other states, is that they're not enforceable. And in Colorado, if you try to enforce an unenforceable non-compete, there are penalties associated with it now. I often, there are. And I don't, just off the top of my head, I think it's a class 2 misdemeanor actually to impose an unenforceable non-compete or to have that provision in your contract. And so you have to be very careful. And, non-solicitation provisions are lumped into that category as well because they're seen for the most part as the same category of, a prohibition against competition, which is becoming increasingly more unfavorable. Both at the federal and at the state level. And so, and I just recently, I talked a client I took it out of her agreement. She just had a basic template, had a non-solicitation clause in it. And I said, look, we got to remove this. It's just not worth it. The employee does not qualify just at a base level. And look, I think that there are better uses of your time and money than trying to go after somebody. I always put it back in your business. Be better, be a better competitor out there in the market. I think you're much better off. And if you do have particular intellectual property or things that are actually proprietary to your company that you want to protect, well, you have to insert other protective measures to ensure that at the termination of employment or how you structure your terminations, you're retaining that information and cutting the employee off immediately from that so that they can't duplicate those things to the best of your ability. But I've never really seen it work out. Enforcing those provisions.
Bill, what's the alternative, especially when it comes to salespeople or business development or people that are quote unquote rainmakers and have so much hold the relationship by and large outside of the founding attorney? What are alternative language or protective measures that we could put in? Or are you like, there aren't and don't hang your hat elsewhere?
Yeah. Again, I think it's a lot of it is just ensuring that putting protective measures that are non-legal protective measures in place, like how do you store your client information, who has access to it, and how easy is it to download and replicate and all of those things. If you're going to drill down to the best you can. And I understand, like, there are certain instances where you just like, you want to have at least have a fighting chance with a provision like that in there. But you gotta drill it down to trade secrets. And if you're going to use that argument, then you have to be able to show on the back end that it is a trade secret. And that's typically, courts are very wary of just considering a client list a trade secret. So you have to go through the measures of actually protecting that information and showing that you did protect that information, and that you had policies in place that prohibited employees from downloading that information to personal devices and things of that nature, so that you can hang your hat on other legal arguments other than just a straight non-compete or non-solicitation.
And when you say other measures, are you meaning file for a trademark, or let me ask that question first and foremost. So many attorneys will say, well, our proprietary process or our trade secret, and 9 out of 10 times when I look at it, I'm like, that's not really a trade secret. It's, talk to me about that. Is it filing for a trademark?
Not for the, it could be. It absolutely could be that. I don't, as far as trademarks, as you know, like I do basic trademark filings, but as far as other IP protection, I usually refer those matters out to firms that just do those, that just focus on IP. Yeah, it has to be super unique, right? Doing things like keeping your so trademarking it, so filing for a trademark, a federal trademark, protected trademark, and then having that on your documents, to answer your question, is one way that you can at least have a legal argument that you can use to prohibit the commercial use of that after an attorney or an associate leaves your practice.
Yeah. Yes. Or a salesperson. A salesperson. I have more stories about the salesperson than I do about the attorney and paralegal in regards to that. So what I'm hearing from you is almost you keep that language out of there and put protective measures inside your business with your cybersecurity access and things of that nature, how you store things, because it could be a misdemeanor possibly in regards to putting that within your contracts. Is that accurate?
Well, just trying to enforce it. Yeah. It gives teeth to the recent, Colorado's turn into it's been a steady decline into not favoring non-competes. But, also, so don't throw the baby out with the bathwater either. You still want to have a good non-disclosure confidentiality agreement as well in place, which that's where you're going to find the terms that, what is proprietary to the company? You have a good definition for that. And part of it is, things that are labeled proprietary, so all of those documents that you're talking about, your systems and procedures that are unique to your practice, or your methodologies should be, you should have those markings on those documents so that you can, again, have something other than a non-compete to say, look, this person stole my intellectual property, and here's how I can prove that they did it. One of which is they removed my trademark markings from the document.
Yeah, excellent. I love that clarification. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but once hire a contract attorney so you can do your due diligence and make certain where you could put protective measures. But then I'll always hear from attorneys or business owners that will say, well, I know they're not enforceable anymore, but I'm just going to throw it in there to scare them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, as employers have done that, I've done it. I've sent nasty grams, years ago in practice for employers to non-competes that were likely unenforceable as a shot across the bow to employees. And so, that practice is very common in employment. And so you're seeing measures to counteract it.
Yeah.
For better or worse.
Let's talk about company formations and structures. What are some of the common traps that you see in businesses? Skip throughout formation and or ignore.
Get yourself a quality CPA to begin with. And even, for me, even before, in conjunction with me. So in conjunction with your business attorney, unless they have a specialty in tax, which I do not, I always incorporate the client's CPA to ensure that whatever legal structure that we're contemplating will ultimately meet their tax goals, because that is one of the key, obviously one of the key decisions that you're going to have to make starting out. And so you want to have a CPA on board to give them a clear picture of where you're going, or at least a rough idea, so that they can help and be a part of that conversation.
I love that.
And then also, just sorry to interrupt you, but just working as a team, like that's, we're very much Jared on the estate planning side, always roping in financial advisors during the funding process to ensure that, even before that, during the design meeting process, to ensure that we've allocated for all their assets, that they understand roughly what the structure is, so that so that everybody's talking with each other, and the same goes for business formations. So business attorneys should be talking to the client CPA.
And make sure, again, you do that checkup. I just hired Bill again to go through mine where I set up my LLC in Florida back in
Right.
2008, where that's where my bookkeeper was, my partner was at the time, and heard, set it up in Florida because you don't have to pay taxes and blah, blah, blah. And now I'm here in Colorado, and, then Bill runs a check and he's like, your Colorado's not even active or in good standing. And just it's a big ball. It's a big ball. And really, even if you are a solopreneur, which a lot of our audience is, or a solo practitioner and what have you, once again, just like when you set up the partnership agreement, hopefully the day that you set it up, you are not still in that same position. You have more liability, you have more revenue, life circumstances have changed, and just doing that annual wellness check, right?
Absolutely. And like just talking about estate planning, and I mean, because as you know, we do, and you mentioned it at the beginning, we do probate as well. And what I see is I see estates. Well, I know he owned an LLC. I know that there was a partner at some point. We don't know where. There's no documents whatsoever. We don't know who owns what or how that or what's going on. And so just at a basic level, again, like ensure that you have something written down that reflects the ownership level and just a basic understanding of what is happening. And that doesn't cost you an arm and a leg. I'm happy to work through that scenario with clients, and again, meet them at their budget to where, yeah, we'll revisit this when you're more profitable and you have more time and money to spend on legal. For now, let's just get you a decent framework in place so that you can take the next step.
Yeah. And sometimes we feel like, oh, I don't really have the time or money. But one of my favorite quotes is, if you don't make time for your wellness, you'll be forced to make time for your illness. And that includes, a probate witch hunt when your family should be grieving. It definitely taxes, CPA, all the things
Yep.
that we've talked about today, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It is such a stressful situation for the family to be in.
Yes. And even as a business owner, right? When you get that email of, whatever it might be that you haven't filed your whatever to keep your LLC or your EIN number, because contracts aren't just paperwork, which I'm learning firsthand as well. They're really business protection and clarity tools, and really that peace of mind tool as well, and having it all in one place.
That's exactly right. And what I say, again, so contracts, you want somebody that speaks contract fluently, and business attorneys speak it fluently so that we can ensure that whatever the understanding is between the parties, that it's articulated clearly, legally speaking, and that we flesh out, because we've been through these situations, we've seen disputes, we know where the common problem areas are, and I'm able to work with you to flesh out those areas so that we can get the best understanding we can in the agreement, so that both parties know what they're obligated to do, so that will greatly reduce the conflict down the road.
And I love what you said to me. Correct me if I heard you right or wrong in regards to this when we first met. And you said, yeah, I'm a business attorney, but I'm really a contract attorney. I love contracts. And there are some business attorneys that really aren't into contract writing. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, you could think of like just with other attorneys, right? You transactional versus litigation. I don't litigate. I'm not a litigation attorney. I'm strictly on the transactional side. And for a prior firm, I created our templates. So I drafted those from scratch. I have a lot of experience. And just with contract language, the provisions that normally are included in whatever type of relationship we're describing, and just to be able to, and I invest in contract drafting. So I use Spellbook, which is a great AI tool in Word to help as a co-pilot, so that I can ensure that I deliver a good product to the client.
I love that. Well, Bill, I can't thank you enough. Number one, I love that I met you at ProVisor. So I'll have to do another podcast on networking is not dead, and really locking arms with referral and relationship based business. I send all of my Colorado entrepreneurial friends your way. I'm deeply grateful for you, and really want to underscore just from my own personal experience in regards to client contracts, LLC formation, partnerships. Like even, I had partnered way back when. She gave me the business for $1, what have you. And you're like, whoa, where's this? I'm like, oh, I need that. You're like, yeah, when it comes to probate, and Ada and Ella are going to, you need all of this in writing. I'm like, okay. So
Yeah, it's funny how people's their recollection changes when those events
Yeah.
happen. And so we want to make sure all that's reflected.
Absolutely. And with just even the business formation in regards to all that, I'm like, my previous bookkeeper's like, there's no danger. My previous attorney's like, there's no danger with the Florida, what have you. And I love the powerful questions that you asked me when we met in regards to why it was keeping me up at night. And it became incredibly clear of what our next right move is. Number one, for my peace of mind, but number two, for the clarity in the contracts, that they're all central in one place. And upon death, because it's for certain, that's inevitable, it's coming, then it makes it so much easier on my children.
Yeah. And that's at the end of the day, that's, it's also what we do is provide peace of mind, keep you profitable, keep you in business, and provide peace of mind so that you don't have to worry about it. And I also want to say, just before we sign off, that we've also been super happy with your services as well. You found a rock star for us, Madison. She's been wonderful. You guys did a great job. And we're retaining you to hire another employee, which I will email here shortly because we are in need of another employee because we're growing and we're doing well. And we're going to have you on board for that as well.
That's amazing. We would be more than happy to help you with that. Thank you so much for shedding light, especially on these non-competes, independent contractor agreement, partnership agreements, business formation, and all things contract law and business law. Tell our listeners how they could reach out to you and connect with you best.
Yeah, so you can call our office. Our main line is 303-418-8860, or you can email me directly at bill@independencelegalgroup.com.
And you can also go to their website as well.
Yeah, our website, independencelegalgroup.com. Yep.
Yes. We'll have everything
we have a
in the show
link
notes. Yeah. Great. Thank you for being here today, Bill. Greatly appreciate you and look forward to seeing you at the next Provisors meeting.
Thank you as well, Molly. I also second join Provisors. It's been wonderful. I've been nothing but satisfied with that group. Very, very high quality referrals.
Yes. All right. Until next time, gang, continue being legal leaders, leading legal leaders, and get your legal documents and contracts in order. Stop putting it off. We've reached the end of yet another episode of the Hire and Empower with Molly McGrath podcast, where dream teams of entrepreneurs in an entrepreneur's world really do come true. Listen, whether you're a business owner, employee, executive, or hiring manager,